Hey everyone, Yaron here, and yeah, exciting times. Native Instruments have just released Kontakt 8. There's a bunch of new things, both in the way the application is displayed in the UX, and some new features, and some new instruments, and a lot going on. I won't be showing too much of like what's included in K15 and such things, but rather, yeah, basically just a video about what's new in Kontakt 8. So let's get right down to it. As you see, I have it Kontakt 8 open right here, and it already is looking a little bit unfamiliar. So before we get into this chords tool I have open up here, let's first take a look at what's new in the navigation and how you interact with the application. So the first thing you notice is there's new stuff here on the side, not the old kind of side browser that you're used to. That still exists, but there is this new view that I'm viewing here. So this is here on the top, and you notice quickly two things also different here on the top. The first one is that I can go back into classic view. So if I just click here on view, I go default and I go classic, and classic is basically the old familiar rack view. You can still see your old library tab here on the side with all the files and monitor tabs and everything that it had over here. You can, of course, as before, sort of remove this side pane and etc. etc. And this is basically the old sort of way that you had up until now. You can, of course, access the full screen browser. Everything else is still that exact same way. The different thing here is that now you can go into this new, what is called a default view. And as you can see also, there is no more single view. So this sort of UX and flow where you could just really quickly, simply just load up an instrument, go into single view and yeah, just focus on that instrument. That is unfortunately gone. I'm not exactly sure why. But instead we have this default view. You can kind of go back to that sort of single view behavior if you remove the side pane and load a single instrument, but still it's kind of like the rack, but in a new presentation. The second thing you notice is that there is this sort of instrument navigator here over on the top. Before we get into this tool, which is actually what I have loaded over here, you see that, yeah, it's basically kind of a way to sort out your rack. It's akin to the old navigator in the old classic view, just a little bit more refined. And as you can see, it has kind of what you would expect. So I have my instrument loaded here, and I have the main controls, so like the panning and the volume, mute and solo, and I can also remove this instrument, and I can also add additional instruments, which immediately brings us to this new sort of side browser, which is something like a subset of this full screen browser. It doesn't have all its features. What is a real shame to me is that it does not include tags. So if I, for example, select this Porphyra instrument, and I want to scroll the snapshots, all I have is alphabetical order and banks, which is a little bit, if I go into the real full screen library tab, I have, of course, all my tagging up here, and I can browse tags. So for example, if I'm specifically interested in Polyphonic Aftertouch patches, I have to go here into this one, look for Poly Aftertouch, and then I have them over here on the side, which does not happen here. So you can browse just by banks, and then you have an alphabetical order. A bit of a shame, but in any case, this exists here. If you're simply looking to just load NKIs, so of course I can just now go, and while I'm, basically goes by the selected slot. So while I'm on this slot, I can double click, and it will load a second instance. Let's kill the preview for a second. It will load a second instance, and I can then kill the instance. And you can a little bit kind of play with the size on some level. So that is kind of the new view, and that is the way you work with the old stuff in the new view. But you also have some new things here. Maybe let's start with the tools. So there are, let's call it like a new paradigm where you have MIDI effects in Kontakt. It's not entirely a new concept, right? Because even in the past, if we go quickly into the classic view, you did have the KSP multi-scripts that you could load. And they would do sort of MIDI processing, but this is a little bit, it's the same idea, but with a different presentation. Now those can have a GUI on top, and also they interact, as you can see, with the browsing, both in the instrument navigation and here actually in the browser selector itself. So there are currently two tools. One is a chords tool and one is a phrase tool. A little bit weird, I don't know why, but if I double click now on one, I get this file not found error, so I'm not exactly sure what is going on. So the way I've been, maybe it's just my system, so I don't want to say anything. Maybe an I are aware and they will fix it. Not exactly sure. But if I go now to, instead of searching by instrument, if I go to search by combined, and then I click this show tool enhanced only. So if, for example, if I go just to an older library that I have installed, then it has the old sort of multis that came with that library. But this particular library does not have tool enhanced multis, so they don't show up in the search. So this is kind of at least neat that you can know what has it. And for example, this Confluence library does have this tool attached to some of these snapshots, let's call them. In the end, they are snapshots, so they're multis behind the scenes, but they're snapshots like any other snapshot. So let's maybe load it. And that is kind of my current way of loading this chords tool, I'm sorry. So you can obviously then delete things and add new things, exactly this workflow. And you saw me kind of, I can obviously drag and drop. I don't have to put it up here. This actually doesn't really seem to work if I do that, but if I grab it over here, then I can obviously load it in, and then I can play this chords thing, and it will control the loaded instrument. And inside you have various kind of just a chord tool in the end. So think about it again like MIDI effects, so something like you have in Logic or in or Ableton with Max for Live, or in Pro Tools now with MIDI effects. Exact same idea. And I assume that this is supposed to grow. So now there's, as I mentioned, there's chords and phrases. Probably more will come. I don't know, but I assume so. And yeah, currently I'm loading this chord machine. I won't go deep into it. It's something to explore for yourself. One thing I did notice, though, that is now with this particular instrument, the instrument itself is mapped across the whole keyboard. But the chord tool, and I had to kind of find that out, there's a playable range over here. And now it's C1 to C4. So if I click here, you will see that the notes are playing, sound comes out, and everything is okay. But if I click outside of this range, nothing happens. And the notes are kind of colored, right? So it was a bit weird to me that, okay, maybe it's not a playable range for the chord tool, but maybe I should at least get the note without the chords, or maybe, I don't know, the keyboard should be colored to this playable range. But whatever, it's here, and I can, if I want to scale it to the whole range, I can simply do that. All right, so this is the concept for the tools, and again, they do go here in the browser, in the Navigator, sorry, not the browser on top. If I go back now to the classic view, it's a little bit strange that I don't really see this kind of, I don't see this manifestation over here. But in any case, let's close quickly this new chord player. Let's stick with just one instrument. I want to show one more quick thing about the browsing. It could be a little bit confusing because even if you have, so let's close this instrument. Even if you have a brand new, I didn't want to do that. Even if you have a brand new instrument, so I have a new default instrument. If I'm in classic view, I can go inside and I can edit it. If I now switch to well, first of all, if I'm with the wrench open, I cannot even do the switching, a little bit strange. And if I close the wrench, now I can move to default view, but now I cannot click the wrench. So this UX is super confusing for some reason. I don't know why they went with that, but that's just how it is. And if you're in the classic view and you double click to create a new instrument, it will create this just a new instrument, as we all know. But if we're in the default view and we double click to create a new instrument, and this will lead us to the next segment, is it creates this new leap instrument, which is a sort of instrument that is baked into Kontakt. It's kind of like, just like any other Kontakt instrument in the end, but it's really kind of built in to the application and also into the browser, where you literally have this new tab here called Leap. And there are products for this leap tool. Of course, you can, again, if I double click, I can make my own, like a custom kit, as you can see here above, and you can save it. But there are leap products as well. I have one currently installed, so let's quickly open it. And if I go inside, I see there's a bunch of kits, and somehow some of them are not loading. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe I have to update again in Native Access. But this one decided to load for us, so great. And we can kind of play around with the sounds. And this is basically the point of this loop instrument, is that it is basically a loop instrument. So it is a kind of way to bring phrases and looping into Kontakt. And yeah, maybe it's drum loops, maybe it's like bass phrases like we have here, or anything else. I assume it's going to be pretty cool for people that are working in the sort of machina use case and things like that. So again, this is really baked into the application. As you saw, like if I'm in default view, it creates a leap instrument, and the leap stuff is over here, has its dedicated place in the browser. So that is kind of the new stuff as far as the application itself. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that come now with Kontakt and with Komplete, like this new Conflux library and things like that. I don't want to really show this in this video. This is content, and you can explore the content for yourself. What I do want to show, though, is some of the things that are new in the engine itself. So maybe let's quickly go back into the classic view so we can open a new instrument. And we have an empty one right here. And let's quickly go inside and have a quick look at what's new in the engine. So the first thing that I want to look at is if now we go into the source module and we go into the wavetable source type, we notice that there are a number of new things here. The first thing, it's maybe trivial on some level, but it opens a lot of sound design possibilities. So this shaper stage inside the wavetable was available before. It existed in Kontakt. But now we have an identical one, a second shaper stage, and this allows for a lot of sound design. I will give you a very, very simple example. The way this wavetable module works, these shaper stages are used also to do things like pulse width modulation. And if I, for example, select this algorithm over here, now basically this form 1 knob is a pulse width control. And previously, if I did something like that, I would be limited in that sense. Like I dedicate this shaper to pulse width modulation, and I cannot use any of the other algorithms. Now I can do that. I can dedicate this first shaper to pulse width modulation, but I have a second stage. Maybe I want to do osc sync. Maybe I want to do some quantizing. Maybe I want to saturate the oscillator or whatnot. And yeah, so you have the full range of possibilities. Nothing stops builders from actually not dedicating one shaper to one thing or another, but giving these two full shaper stages inside their instrument, and the user can select and mix and match whatever shaping they want. So this is actually, might seem small, but it is a huge addition to the sound design. An even bigger addition, and this is really, really huge. The wavetable oscillator now has a sort of paired built-in modulation oscillator. And this, think of it as like another oscillator that sits next to the wavetable, and it can interact with the wavetable in a number of ways. And of course, it has some built-in shapes. So you have a sine, a triangle, and various TX shapes, which are, yeah, just interesting shapes, and they're good for FM. And then the modulator itself has some algorithms that it can do. So, and some of these are bidirectional. What do I mean by that? So for example, I can select frequency modulation, and then whatever, and you can see mod osc to wavetable. That means that whatever wavetable I load here and whatever shape and settings I have here will go from this direction. So mod oscillator will be doing FM modulation to the wavetable. And then you have the opposite direction where the wavetable actually modulates the mod osc. You have a self-feedback frequency modulation where then the mod osc, the rest of the controls don't come into play because just the wavetable is feedbacking itself, but the mod amount is what controls that. And the same for phase modulation. So you have sort of the sort of gnarly Nord lead-like FM crunchy stuff that you can do. And you also have the phase modulation, which is more the intricate sort of sweet Yamaha style FM sounds. You can also put this oscillator in ring modulation mode, and then the two of them ring modulate each other, or this one might seem simple, but it's actually quite handy. You can have a mix mode, and then this oscillator can serve, for example, as a sub-oscillator by taking the tuning down, or as even like a higher oscillator by taking the tuning up, or as something a little bit detuned. It's really up to the user and the builder to use this in a creative way. So again, this is actually huge because this brings a sort of virtual analog sound design into Kontakt. If you simply try it out, just load a sine wave into the wavetable and play around with the frequency modulation, you'll immediately get the idea. And instruments built with this, I'm sure, are going to sound amazing. I can show you one towards the end of the video maybe. So these are the two major additions to the wavetable, and they are kind of pretty big together, I think. But there are some other small things, or I don't know if they're small, but there are some other things that have been added. One of the, well, it's two important things actually that they go together. So the first one is, now let's go into the modulators, and let's quickly go to the external sources and select the Polyphonic Aftertouch. Now this allows builders, instruments, or tweakers and end users to basically use Polyphonic Aftertouch, incoming Polyphonic Aftertouch messages to affect whatever in their instrument. So here, for example, I would choose, I don't know, form 1 in Polyphonic Aftertouch would affect this knob. The thing is, and I released the Control Mark III keyboards, right? And they support Polyphonic Aftertouch, beautiful keyboards, and it was one of the key features. But this particular modulator in Kontakt was actually broken. It was not responding to Polyphonic Aftertouch. It was treating Polyphonic Aftertouch as if it was channel Aftertouch and responding only to one note at a time. And this has been fixed, and this now behaves correctly. And now this really opens up the possibilities of really creating expressive Polyphonic Aftertouch supported instruments in Kontakt that are perfect to be paired with the Control Mark III keyboards. Along with that, external modulator amount was actually limited in Kontakt to 32. So if you start stacking up things, you want Polyphonic Aftertouch to give your user, especially in an instrument. So if we go quickly to, I'll go quickly from here, from the library tab. It's just faster at this case. And if we go into my instrument here, you will notice that there's a lot of external modulation possibilities, and this Polyphonic Aftertouch, for example. So 1, 2, and we have 4 LFOs. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 just for the Polyphonic Aftertouch, and then velocity the same, and mod wheel the same, and we're already way more than 32. So it was kind of these two things together, the Polyphonic Aftertouch modulator being broken and the external modulators being limited to 32, really limited the kind of expressive instruments that you can build with Kontakt, right? And all this together, the expressibility of the, added expressibility of the wavetable, the fixed Polyphonic Aftertouch modulator, and the doubling of the external modulators really opens up all the sound design possibilities and building expressive instruments. There's a number of other small things. I won't go into every single one, but let's jump to the effects section. There are a few new effects. They all are in a specific category. So there's a new category called Mangling, and here you will notice 5 new effects. They all come from Guitarig/Tractor, and as the name implies, they are all kind of in the sort of beat mangling, loop mangling sort of headspace. And yeah, we have these 5 over here. I won't play around with them. I think it's out of scope of this video. You can of course play around with them as a user, but suffice it to say that what I showed before, the leap instrument, actually makes a lot of use for this. I assume that they were actually ported to enable the use cases for the leap instrument, because it really makes sense if you're using it with drums or with phrases. And I can see a lot of builders that are building drum and phrase libraries really making really great use of these effects. So 5 new effects, it's nothing to laugh about. It's a lot of added power and a lot of added creative options in the end. I love it. And then we have one addition in the effects. It's maybe hard to spot at first because it's not a new effect, but if we go into Replika, and if you're familiar with how Replika looked, you'd be surprised because suddenly there's a bunch of new stuff down here. This all did not exist, so it existed like you see it now. So if I click here, well, it's clicked by default. If I'm on main, all these controls that you see existed in Replika. But now these 3 new sort of tabs are existing suddenly, where you have a lot of additional controls. You can give the delay repetitions like shuffling and accents, and you can bend the repetitions now, and you can actually use this as a ducking delay now and do really, really cool things. These features are actually all existing on the VST AU plugin effect for Replika, but they were not kind of exposed in Kontakt, and they are now, and I think this is really cool. So expect instruments to really kind of make use of this. It's probably especially cool with all those cool beat effects. So imagine a library that kind of makes use of like the slicing and mashing, and then like patterning on the delay and ducking and cool shit like that. I can envision some really cool stuff. One more small thing, I actually forgot to show this. Let's quickly go back to the modulation section and quickly open a LFO and jump down over here. One thing that was broken in the LFOs, and this is maybe also cool to mention because these LFOs are actually quite cool. With this fade-in parameter, and as you can see, what it does is it fades in the LFO really slowly. It's cool on whatever kind of LFO, on sine waves, but it's especially cool like on some complex waves where you can start with a smooth sound, and over time, even over 10 seconds, it slowly becomes sort of rhythmic or something like that. So a really cool feature, but it was broken. I don't remember exactly the details, but I think it was like resetting itself after 2 seconds or 200 milliseconds or something like that. It was just not behaving correctly and rendered this a little bit useless. It now works. One small caveat, that old instruments that had that made use of this parameter, they would be still broken if the instrument developers don't manually go in, remove this modulator and add it back in again. So there's just like a new version of the modulator or something like that. But again, this is another nice addition to the to the sound design possibilities, basically. I'm trying to think if I missed something else. I think these are the main things related to instrument development. There are also some new KSP commands. There are additional MIR functions for KSP commands. There's like some sort of support for some MIDI 2.0 commands. There's a new command to send Polyphonic Aftertouch events via script, which is really, really cool. So again, together with this fixed Polyphonic Aftertouch modulator and the ability to send Polyphonic Aftertouch events from script, I can envision a lot of libraries moving forward making use of that as well. So these are the main new things in Kontakt. We looked at the engine, and we looked at the application, and we looked at sort of the new tooling around everything. Together, I think they allow for a lot of expressiveness in new instruments. Like I think I said this already a bunch of times. But yeah, these are the additions. There's a few more in the KSP. I didn't mention everything, so just look at the changelog if you're a builder, and just jump into it. Exciting times. Have fun exploring Kontakt 8, and we'll see you in our other videos.